The deadliest part of winter isn't cold. Vikings knew that. It's moisture, wind, and sudden change. One man planned for all three with a structure so boring it looked stupid. Everyone around him prepared for winter the same way they always had. More wood, tighter stacks, stronger roofs. One man prepared for something else entirely, the invisible forces that ruin survival long before cold ever does. As you watch this story, hold one thought in your mind. If winter punished mistakes weeks after they were made, would you prepare for what feels obvious, or for what most people never notice? Watch this all the way through. Because by the end, you'll understand why a structure that looked pointless was actually the most intelligent decision on the mountain. Vikings never relied on a single source of warmth. They built systems. This is the part most modern retellings miss. We imagine Vikings wrapped in fur, standing defiantly against snowstorms, surviving because they were somehow harder than everyone else. Stronger bodies, tougher minds, thicker skin. But that version of history is comforting fiction, because if Vikings had relied on toughness alone, they would have died quickly. Cold does not care how brave you are. Winter does not reward pride. It punishes inefficiency. Viking survival was not about endurance. It was about engineering. Layered wool trapped air instead of fighting wind directly. Air was the real insulation, not the fabric itself. The wool's job was to hold still pockets of air close to the body, slowing heat loss rather than stopping it outright. Thick walls did the same thing at a larger scale. They did not block cold, they delayed it. Stone, turf, and timber absorbed heat slowly and released it slowly, turning entire structures into thermal reservoirs rather than fragile shells. Central hearths were not just places to cook, they were thermal anchors. Stone around the fire soaked up heat all day and released it through the night. Long after flames died, warmth remained. Communal sleeping was not tradition or intimacy alone. It was physics. Bodies generate heat. Separating them wastes energy. Sleeping together conserved it. Even animals were used as biological furnaces. Livestock was housed close, sometimes beneath living spaces or behind shared walls. Their body heat rose naturally, warming floors and walls. Waste heat was never wasted. It was captured, redirected, slowed, and reused. Nothing stood alone. Every choice supported another. Heat was not created recklessly. It was protected carefully. The Viking mindset was not, how do we make more heat? It was, how do we stop losing the heat we already have? The tunnel followed that same philosophy. It was never meant to create warmth. It was meant to preserve it. It didn't burn fuel. It saved fuel. It didn't challenge winter directly. It removed winter's leverage. This distinction matters more than people realize. Creating heat is expensive. Protecting heat is efficient. Vikings understood this deeply because fuel was life. Firewood required time, strength, and planning. Every log burned too quickly was a future risk. Every wasted flame was a mistake that could not be undone. Vikings also understood moisture as the true enemy. Wet wool still insulates, but wet firewood is nearly useless. That single distinction meant the difference between warmth and smoke, between survival and suffocation. Firewood soaked with moisture must first boil water before it can release heat. That process steals energy instead of providing it. This is why Vikings layered spaces, buffered environments, and controlled transitions between temperatures. Cold outside, warm inside, but never a sudden clash. Sudden changes create condensation. Condensation creates ice. Ice consumes heat before warmth ever reaches a body. This was not theory. It was live knowledge, passed down through generations that watched people freeze after making small, invisible mistakes. That is exactly what the tunnel did. When snow falls straight down, it is manageable. Gravity is predictable. You can shovel it, brush it away, stack against it. But winter wind does not fall. It hunts. It moves sideways, upward, backward. It forces snow into cracks you did not know existed. It piles drifts where you never intended them. During the day, sunlight melts that intrusion just enough to be dangerous. At night, temperatures drop, and that meltwater refreezes into ice exactly where you do not want it. That is how woodpiles die. The neighbors trusted heat leaking from their cabins to keep logs dry. They assumed warmth would solve the problem. Vikings would have known better. Heat without control creates moisture. Moisture trapped creates ice. Ice steals energy silently and relentlessly. The tunnel created a thermal buffer zone, a space that was neither indoors nor outdoors. That middle space mattered more than the cabin itself. Inside the tunnel, temperature changes happened slowly. Wind lost its velocity. Snow could not drift or pile. Moisture had time to escape instead of condense. The ground stayed dry. The air stayed calm. This slow transition was everything. When winter finally attacked, it did not arrive politely. It did not test gently. It buried the valley under deep snow in less than 2 days. That is when tradition failed. Neighbors fought their way to their woodpiles only to find them frozen into solid blocks. Axes bounced uselessly. Logs dragged inside were soaked, hissing and steaming in the fire. Flames struggled. Smoke thickened. Stoves burned endlessly, but rooms stayed cold. Children were wrapped in every blanket available. Adults took turns feeding fires through the night, not sleeping, but guarding heat that refused to stay. Twice the wood was burned for half the warmth. Panic crept in quietly, not through storms, but through realization. Vikings would have recognized this instantly. They understood that firewood must stay dry first, warm second. Warmth without dryness is wasted effort. Up on the ridge, the tunnel did its quiet work. The man stepped from his door into filtered canvas light, not into wind. The structure shook and flapped under gusts, but inside the tunnel, the air was stable, predictable, calm. He walked in his shirt sleeves to the woodshed while the storm screamed inches away. His firewood separated cleanly. No ice, no steam, no wasted energy. Logs ignited instantly, releasing heat instead of consuming it. Flames burned clean. Smoke rose properly. Heat stayed where it belonged. This is exactly how Viking longhouses worked. Thick walls slowed heat loss. Smoke holes controlled airflow deliberately, not accidentally. Curtains and internal partitions created microclimates inside larger spaces. Nothing was designed for comfort alone. Everything was designed for control. Control of air, control of moisture, control of transition. The tunnel controlled the environment between the house and the fuel. That single decision meant he burned only what he needed. No excess, no panic, no constant fear of running out. For weeks, while others fought winter, he simply lived through it. Not heroically, not dramatically, quietly. When spring finally came, the difference was impossible to ignore. The valley thawed into mud, exhaustion, and loss. Neighbors emerged thinner, older, worn down. Their woodpiles were ruined. Some had burned furniture. Some had burned pieces of their own homes. Survival had come at a cost they would feel for years. They climbed the ridge, expecting to find the madman broken. Instead, they found him calm, healthy, shaving on his porch. The tunnel was gone, folded away like Viking wool cloaks in summer. It had never been permanent. It had never needed to be. But the ground beneath it was dry. His remaining firewood cured perfectly in open air. Just like Viking survival systems, the tunnel was seasonal, built when needed, removed when not. Nothing wasted, nothing permanent where permanence was unnecessary. When asked how he survived, he did not talk about strength or endurance. He did not brag. He did not lecture. He pointed to the folded canvas. Vikings understood this lesson centuries earlier. Survival is not about brute force. It is about reducing loss, slowing change, creating buffers. You do not beat winter by making more heat. You beat it by refusing to lose what you already have. Vikings didn't survive because they were stronger than winter. They survived because they removed its advantages. The man on the ridge did the same thing. He didn't chase warmth. He protected it. He didn't fight the storm. He slowed it down until it lost its teeth. That's why this story matters. Not because of canvas or tunnels, but because it shows how real survival works. Quiet decisions made early, systems that look boring until they're the only thing left standing. Now I want you to think honestly. If you had watched him build that tunnel, would you have laughed, or would you have asked why? Write your answer in the comments. And if stories like this make you rethink how people actually survive extreme conditions, subscribe. Because winter doesn't reward hope, it rewards understanding.